All right. Good morning, everyone. Uh, my name is Dr. Andrew Schwartz. I am the lead scientist and manager up here at the UC Berkeley Central Sierra Snow Lab. It's been about 6 weeks since I've done one of these briefings, and I plan on doing another one here in about a week, maybe a little bit longer after we do the March 1st snow survey here in California and throughout the Western US to talk about conditions a little further. But with that being said, we'll do this briefing kind of the same way that we did the last one. I'll go over kind of recent conditions up here, the storms that have come through, and then we'll talk about where we're sitting at with our water supply throughout California and the Western US, and then we'll go on to some outlooks as far as the forecast, and then more so monthly and seasonal outlooks. It's pretty straightforward. Realistically, what we'll do is we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Anybody can ask any question or ask for elaboration on anything throughout the presentation. And if there's anything that goes wrong, like if my audio goes off or anything, just raise your hand. I'll be able to see that. But yeah, try to wait until the end to ask any questions. And I think I have you guys on mute. So that means that realistically, you guys will probably have to be unmuted by me once the time comes, but not a big deal. We can do that. So without too much further discussion, we'll get started here. We'll take over on the front page of our website. I do want to point out that we now have our webcam up and running again. It has been for the last 48 hours or so. We did have a period during this last storm system where it went down for about 12 hours. We had a power outage here, and we had to kind of limp along our backup systems. We do have a backup generator and backup battery systems for our data loggers and our data server, but it was a little bit touch and go there for a while when the power didn't come on. So had to shut that down, but it's up and back and running again. So you can see a few numbers for the last several days. Our 7-day snowfall total is 31 inches roughly. It has been probably, I think that's a 5-day total, not necessarily a 7-day total, because there wasn't a whole lot of snow before the last 5 days. But if we go back 8 days, we actually have 44 inches of snow overall. So almost 4 feet in the last 8 days is pretty terrific. And you can see what that snowpack and these consistent storms have really materialized as. We have 92% of average median SWE, which is fantastic. And then somewhat coincidentally, 92% of our overall precipitation here at the bottom, which is both rain and snow to date, and 92% of our snowfall to date as well. These numbers are for the water year. So water year goes from October 1st through September 30th. So that will be ending September 30th this upcoming in 2024 here. But you can see how far we've come again since the beginning of January. We have snow water equivalent that's reaching our median values. And, you know, when we were talking at January 1st, this was at 28% of average statewide, which was pretty rough. And we fought our way back. And it just kind of goes to show that initial perspective that we had early on of, you know, not panicking and that we've had years that have made up in the last months of the season has kind of come true. And so good thing that we did not panic at that point. If we talk about the overall region instead of just the snow lab over the last few days or the season as a whole, you can see the last 3 days we've gotten quite a bit of snow up here in the central and northern parts of the Sierra Nevada. Not quite as much, you know, south of us and then down to Merced, but down in the Mammoth region, kind of down in the southern Sierra Nevada, and with Big Bear and things like that, we've gotten quite a bit of snowfall. And overall for this year, the snow lab's at 211 inches of snowfall total. And we can see that, yeah, on the season snowfall total map, we're seeing somewhere between 180 and 240. It's not too detailed because it has to keep track of a lot of snow, but you can see the corresponding colors on the right there to each threshold for snowfall. So a lot of things. We did see a little bit, just a trace amount of snowfall yesterday that that was not mentioned this morning in any posts. Typically, in order for us to post any type of update or even make a record, we have to have at least a half a centimeter of snowfall. And so that snow fell primarily early yesterday morning, and then just wasn't enough for us to trigger a snow measurement. So moving on, if we look at the state as a whole, and the conditions for this date and time, this is from the California Department of Water Resources on their CDEC page, or the California Data Exchange Center. We can see Northern California is still the highest. That was the case earlier this year too. They got a lot of extra precipitation early on compared to the Central and Southern Sierra. So they're actually at 100% of average right now, which is fantastic. Here in the Central Sierra, a little bit lower than we are at the lab with 84%, and then down south in the Southern Sierra, they're at 79%. But they have been coming back, which is really fantastic because they had a really slow start to the season. So, you know, if we go back to the previous time that we did this, which there we go, got a little bit out of control there. So the last briefing was on the 11th. You can see those numbers were pretty dramatically different, you know, 45% of average, 48, 31, and even the first of this year, 32, 28, 20. So we've come just a really long way. I keep harping on that point, but it's the truth. We've come back. We're now at 86% overall for the state, which is very positive. But realistically speaking, the key number here in the statewide summary is that 69% of the April 1st average. So we have been clawing our way back, and that's been fantastic. But we do need the storm window to stay open. If we were to level off, not get many storms, we're only still below 3/4 of what we would want for our April 1st average. And that would put us behind the ball leading into late spring and summer once the snow stops coming in. So we need the storm window to come open, or to stay open, so that we can keep building the snowpack. Moving on to how this kind of compares with other years. This is another product from the California Department of Water Resources. When we look at the trends overall, you can see the months here on the bottom on the x-axis, and then the percentage of April 1st average on the y-axis. This light blue gray, or this light blue shaded area, that's average. So if we're at the top of that, we're basically at average, which is why up here in the north, you can see that we're 100%. But just compared to some other years that we had, last year is in yellow, so you can see how much higher we were last year, particularly down south. You can see 2015, 2016, that's a year that I picked because it's kind of similar to what we've seen so far this year. It was roughly an average year, a little bit below down south, but pretty similar to what we're seeing this year. So kind of a good thing to look at overall. 2014, 2015 was the absolute minimum. That's this thin blue line on the bottom that you guys can see. And then 1982, 83 is considered traditionally to be the maximum in the state. Although obviously last year in certain areas was higher. When you combine all the regions in the state, they came up quite a bit above that 82, 83 maximum. But this is how it's looking so far. We've got some good progress and still plenty of snow season to go. We still have to get, to April 1st. So another 5 weeks of building our snowpack. And then we'll start to get the melt season going on, or what we call the ablation season. And ablation, fun vocab word, is realistically any process that takes snowpack off of the ground. So evaporation, melt, sublimation, which is going directly from ice to water vapor, anything like that, that is considered sublimation. And so our sublimation season typically starts around the 1st of April, occasionally just after that. And that's why we want the storms to keep coming in, so we can build up to that April 1st point. Moving on to our reservoir storage. We spoke about this last time as well. Just terrific things happening here. We can see everything on here. Let me refresh this page. It's not happy with me right now. There it is. Now the other ones have filled in. So we can see everything on this page is at or above historical average, which is, of course, what we want to see at this time of year. So these numbers, you'll notice some of them only go through yesterday because sometimes the data comes in later in the day, but this one's through yesterday at midnight. But again, Shasta, Oroville, Don Pedro, all these are above average except for San Luis. And so that shows just still that last year's big water year was paying dividends. And the benefit too that we're seeing even over the last month is great, because if we go back to January 1st, many of them were still above average. Some of them were just about at average, and some of them, Shasta and Oroville especially, have actually come up a little bit. We have seen releases recently for flood mitigation purposes. So that's why we've seen a little bit of spillway photos and videos with big amounts of water coming out, because we want to make sure that if there are big atmospheric rivers coming in, we have the headspace for flood mitigation if need be. But overall, reservoir is looking fantastic at this point. The key thing here, again, though, is we just need more storms, because if we stop here, we end at 70% or so. Some of this additional storage is going to go into making up for that lack of snowpack, and we don't want that to happen. So if we can get to around 100% of average for our snowpack this year, it should allow us to carry these benefits forward in time. Now, going out to the entire Western U.S., this is the SNOTEL map that's run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service. And these are all individual measurement points for the snowpack throughout the Western United States, some odd 800 of them, if I recall correctly. They are in their present form color-coded. You can see the legend on the bottom left, ranging anywhere from less than 50% with red to greater than 150% with blue. These are really great if you want to look at specific conditions in a region, say up towards, I don't know, where can we talk about? Snow Mountain. It's kind of nice because they'll allow us to look at the various parameters for that specific location, but generally we don't need that much detail for our purposes. So what we'll do is we'll switch to the basin view and see, we're zooming all over the place, and see that we actually have come up quite a bit in our basin storage, particularly here in California and the Southern Rockies, throughout Utah and Arizona. So the Western U.S. is looking pretty good as a whole. You know, the one exception being the northern portions of Wyoming and Montana, Idaho, Washington. You know, that area started off the season pretty well, but storm tracks have moved, and you know, these dry conditions persist even up into British Columbia and Canada. And so they're not getting a whole lot of moisture. I know recently there was a ski resort in Montana that ended up having to close early because they had only had, I think, something like 3 to 5 days open because of the lack of snow. So conditions improving for the southwestern U.S., not so much for the northwestern U.S., so to speak. And if we, again, we'll go back and take a look at January 11th, the last time we spoke about this. And we've come a long way. Nevada was still looking good at that point, but realistically, you know, most of the Rockies were 70, 80% of average. We were down around the 40s, 50s here. And then we had this big belt up of kind of 70s, 60s, 80s that has filled in and come up closer to average now as well. So coming back to present day, a lot of benefit sitting in the last 6 weeks of precipitation in terms of bulking up our snowpack and our water resources. So that's, again, great news, things that we were hoping for but not necessarily expecting. Moving on to the outlook, we have a couple dry days ahead of us. This, I should mention, I'm going to move over to our precipitation type and rate. So this is for the GFS, or the Global Forecast Model, which is the American medium range model. You can see, we'll scroll down a little bit. There at the bottom, it's going to tell you what precipitation type you're looking at based off of color, and the intensity based off of shade. So rain is going to be, light rain is going to be light green, heavy rain is going to be dark yellow, snow is going to be light blue if it's light, or it could be a dark pink, or dark or light pink if it's very strong. So as far as precipitation is concerned, we have, I'll zoom out a little bit. We have not much coming in over the next couple days. And then we get into this weekend. If my computer wants to load, there we go. We get towards Sunday and into Monday, and we start to see the development of some precipitation here. This isn't probably going to be anything particularly strong or crazy. It looks like most of it'll be light snow, maybe a couple periods where it's heavier. But that's the big storm on the horizon at this point. And moving forward in time from there, we do dry out midweek again next week. We have the possibility of another storm system coming through kind of late week next week, or even midweek, but it looks like that's going to stay further to the north at this time. And then around the 2nd of March, we're looking at another storm system coming in that will bring potentially heavier snowfall rates and more snow that then should hopefully keep kind of a consistent flow of storms coming through. So a few storms in the future. We're getting out past 10 days, which is always kind of laughable, but it does look like we'll have consistent storms moving through and a moist start to the beginning of the month. In terms of looking at overall accumulations for these storms, one thing that has been shown time and time again this year is, for whatever reason, the models are typically showing heavier snowfall accumulations than are actually occurring, particularly with this model, the GFS, and is likely because it has a little bit of a cold bias in it, which means it's thinking that we're going to get maybe more and fluffier snow than we are actually getting. But for this upcoming storm, I'm just going to hover my cursor here. You can see anywhere from 2 feet around the lab, all the way down to 3 feet in the southern Sierra, 4 feet further down south. I would suspect with this storm right now, based off of what we're seeing, maybe 1 to 2 feet. I think 2 is a bit optimistic. And if we take a look at the European model instead of the GFS, which is the ECMWF, come on, internet slow, apologies. Then we will, come on, buddy. There it goes. Then, yeah, that's kind of the thinking of that as well. We see a foot up at the lab. So again, that 1 to 2 foot range, looking pretty likely up there. But it does maintain a decent amount more snowfall down south, which should go a long way towards bulking up that snowpack in the southern Sierra that's been lacking compared to the northern and central parts of the state. So there's still time for this forecast to change, of course. This is coming through Monday. We're a few days out, but that's what we're looking at right now in terms of the 7-day forecast window. So pretty favorable conditions overall for continuing storms and maintaining our snowpack, with, again, a second storm likely towards the beginning of the month. And you can see the snowfall amounts slowly picking up here at the end of that window. What that will be, what those snowfall amounts, 10 days out, it's hard to say roughly. You know, if these models are, if this model is to be believed, you know, another 3 feet or so, 2 to 3 feet, but it's just too far out to actually make any type of real deterministic forecast with it. So Monday to Tuesday at this point, looking like 1 to 2 feet. Beyond that, it looks like another whack of good moisture, but not sure what it'll be. So that's that forecast. If we're talking about what we've seen recently again and into the future, looking at atmospheric rivers, The next couple tabs are going to be from our good friends at the Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes at Scripps. They are the Atmospheric River Pros. So these maps are pretty easy to read. I'll click on one now. But this shaded area that's blue or green is going to be how much precipitation was seen from this most recent storm. So this is observed characteristics. And you can see the legend for that on the left here. So that's in inches of moisture. And you can see kind of the various areas. We got plenty up north here and into the Central Sierra, not quite as much south of Lake Tahoe. These colored dots are corresponding atmospheric river conditions. So any dot along the coast that is blue or green it experienced either atmospheric river 1 or 2 conditions as far as precipitation amounts and wind and things like that. So that was this last week, this last week of storms effectively. Moving forward, we do have a concentration of moisture along the northern portions of the coast with some atmospheric river 1 to 2 characteristics through February 29th or so. We do have some more precipitation down here, but this upcoming system is pretty disorganized. It's not too atmospheric rivery, if that's a term, but we are going to see some precipitation out of it, but no real strong atmospheric river conditions out of that precipitation that's coming up. This is another good graphic from CW3E, as they're called. This is landfalling atmospheric rivers, effectively, and landfalling moisture. And so you can see the west coast of the United States in the right plot. Each of these dotted lines in the left plot is going to correspond with that specific area of the coast. And then the pixel color indicates the confidence of atmospheric river conditions occurring in that area. So you can see up north here soon. I should mention too, these lines, the vertical lines, these are days out in terms of forecast. So in one day, we'll see some atmospheric river conditions up north in North America, and then 3 to 4 days out, we'll see another atmospheric river impacting the northern portions of the United States. 4 to 5 days out, that's when we're looking at this. So this is all about what's upcoming in the next several days. And we can see, again, the signatures of that storm that's coming in Monday, looking pretty confident at this point in terms of getting some good moisture out of it. The storm around the 1st and 2nd, depending on where we're at in the United States, looking more confident in terms of higher vapor transport, at the higher latitudes than it is down south. But as we move forward in time and the beginning of the month comes into picture, I'm sure that'll become more confident too. So a couple shots of moisture here in the forecast overall, primarily centered kind of on the northern and central coasts of California and the mountains to the east of those, but a little bit just dispersed around as a whole. So I'm going to exit out of that. If we look into what the Climate Prediction Center from the National Weather Service is saying, overall for the next 6 to 10 days, looking like we're going to be we have a chance of being below average. I always kind of say that we are going to be below average, but this is a likelihood or a probability that we're going to be below average in temperature. So we're leaning that way overall for the next 6 to 10 days. And then you can see as we scroll down here, this is for precipitation. And we can see that big bullseye on the northern central coasts of California, and then the southern area in Oregon as well. So kind of the same thing that we've been seeing out of the models, cold and wet effectively for the next 6 to 10 days. 8 to 14 day forecast or outlook is looking the same. A probability of below average temperatures here on the west coast, above average out east, and then above average precipitation as well. Again, focused primarily on Northern California and northern to central, we'll say. So continued moisture coming in with those storm tracks, which is what we were hoping for. If we look out monthly, we'll refresh to see if nope, this wants to be. So this is the outlook. This was issued a week ago. Interestingly, it had above average conditions for temperature. I think obviously that shifted a little bit. I don't know what we're going to be looking at as far as getting into the later period in March. We might see some warming, but clearly above average precipitation here on the right. For the time being, the next week or two, colder than average conditions. We might warm up after that. But that's what this was looking like on February 15th, a week ago. And finally, so in terms of seasonal forecast, this is the March through May outlook. We do see warmer than average temperatures for that period, particularly up north, where they've already kind of been suffering due to a lack of precipitation, specifically snow and warm temperatures. So seeing that up in northern portions of Oregon into Washington, Idaho, and Montana again. Warmer than average conditions for us through California and into kind of central Wyoming, this band that goes from into Nevada, northern Utah, and then equal chances of below and above average temperatures throughout the southern U.S. for the most part. Looking at precipitation outlook for the next several months, unfortunately up north, still looking below in terms of probability for precipitation. So below normal overall up there, below normal down to the far south in Arizona and New Mexico, and then equal chances for us to be below or above normal here throughout the western U.S. So that was a lot of information that I just rattled off, but I am happy to take any questions and expand on things. Overall, the big takeaways I think here are just that the season has panned out really, really well compared to what it could have been. We have seen that snowpack really bulk itself up compared to those early season numbers, 28% of average. And it looks like for the time being, at least, the storm window is going to stay open, which should really help us with continuing to build our snowpack and hopefully getting up to normal. So with that, I'll end here. If anybody has a question, I think I have to unmute you. So you just raise your hand on the control panel and I'll unmute you. Thank you, Gary. Gary said, excellent summary. Thank you very much, sir. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hands. I'm not sure if there's an issue with that. If you have a question, you can also throw it in the chat too. Great. So this presentation will be uploaded to YouTube. The slides, because they're internet tabs, I don't really have a way of posting them anywhere. But what I will do is when I post this on YouTube, I will provide links to all of these resources so that people can go explore them on their own too. I do have a hand raised. I will go ahead and unmute Doug Fisher first, and then I'll get to you, Natalie. So we'll.
Hi, thanks so much for that run through. It was really helpful. I run a summer camp that's just south of you on Loon Lake, up the end of Ice House Road. And we're at 6,500 feet. I was having a hard time parsing out how much snow was going to come in this last big dump, because the European and GFS models were conflicted about where the freezing line was really going to be. Um, do you do you have any sense how to kind of tease that apart and tell from a distance uh, how much snow is going to come in?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this season's been a bit of a struggle, especially with that rain snow line. Last year, 10 days out, you could almost take what the models were saying for what was going to happen in terms of snowfall amounts from those atmospheric rivers. And this year's definitely been a process on figuring things out. What I will say is the European model has performed much better on the rain snow lines than the GFS. In my opinion, it has even been a little bit optimistic as far as how low it's been setting those lines, though. For instance, my house is at 6,000 feet. The lab is at roughly 7,000 feet. And, oftentimes the rain snow line this year, as you mentioned, is kind of between those two. So I would say, realistically speaking, as far as trying to figure out which is going to be better, stick with the European and then maybe give it 250 feet of leeway one way or the other.
Mhm.
It has really tended to do better this year than the GFS, and I think that's why we're seeing these ridiculous accumulations from the GFS, is because it tends to think that it's going to be lighter, fluffier snow that's going to be more accumulating more than the dense stuff than we've been getting. So yeah, I would say as a rule of thumb, kind of what I've been doing is look at the European and then give 250 feet of leeway one way or the other. But it's been a challenging year for that, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Natalie, you threw into the chat any comments today on the difference in outlook for the Southern Sierra and how much the last week have impacted those areas? Yeah, I mean, as far as the Southern Sierra, again, it looks like they're going to be getting the benefit of most of this upcoming storm, which is fantastic. I'll go ahead and share back over here to my Google Chrome, and we'll go back and look at how much the Southern Sierra was lagging at the beginning of January. Um, it was 8 to 12% below the southern and northern parts of the Sierra Nevada back at the beginning of January. And when we look at the last time we did one of these,
Temperature-wise, really nice in the upper 50s.
oh, well, so we are seeing, things start to even out a little bit more. Even at the on January 11th, 6 weeks ago, when I did this briefing, 17% behind the Central Sierra, 14% behind the Northern Sierra. And if we come back to today, it's only 5% behind the Central, and unfortunately 21% behind the northern portions, but it is clawing its way back, and it tends to be that these storms have been giving it at least as much snow as we've been seeing in the Central Sierra, which is a good thing. It's not getting worse, for instance, but hopefully this next storm system will really help bulk it up, because if we go back here, yeah, we are seeing even with but even regardless of whether it's the American or the European model, we're seeing kind of a bullseye of the bulk of the snowfall coming down south. So hopefully that'll help and get them more on par with where we've been in the central and northern parts of the state. Mike Peckner, how much snow is on the ground at CSSL? That is a good question. I will leave this on here. So for those that are interested, we have one of those SNOTEL sites that I have on our interactive map here. You can see if we actually zoom in, we've got one of those SNOTEL sites right here at the Snow Lab. And if you click on that and go, let me see here. I can never remember which of these it is, but there's an actual data page for the site here that has a little picture of the Snow Lab. and has real-time updates on snow depth. You can even get hourly here and click on snow depth, hourly table, view current for the last 24 hours. And it'll give you this fantastic table. I will say the only quality controlled times for this data is at midnight every day. That's when an actual scientist will look at it. So the midnight times are always a little bit better. So I would say 80 inches overall is roughly the snowpack depth, and that's roughly accurate with what we measured. Let me check. I can check our measurements, the most recent measurements that we actually did on the site here too, but I'd say 80 inches is a pretty reliable metric right now. So let's see here. Ours are 226 centimeters, which is 89. So yeah, there's about 80 to 89 inches, depending on what spot on the site you're measuring. A little bit of wind drift and things like that, making it differ from place to place. All right, anonymous Zoom user. In terms of utilizing snow melt, is there a portion of the Sierra that would benefit most from higher snowpack? So this is a good question. This is the second time this week I've gotten this question. So, you know, effectively this question boils down to if you're going to have a deficit in snowpack in the Sierra, where is it best to have that deficit? And to be completely honest, you know, different regions, the snowpack in different regions contribute different amounts to the water resources. I am not an expert on the specific contributions. I can tell you that the Department of Water Resources is going to be much better versed in that than I am. But that being said, you know, typically systems are built a little bit better down south to handle rainfall than they are snow. So if we're able to get big rainfall into those southern systems, that can help make up for a deficit in snowfall. Whereas up in the central and northern portions, we really want that snow. Even though we're going to get rain as well, there is a lot of dependence on that snow too. So it really depends. I would say if you're looking for specifics, reach out to the Department of Water Resources because they will know more. But typically, you know, a deficit down south, a deficit anywhere isn't ideal. But in my humble opinion, if we're going to have one, you know, down south might be the place because they can capture that additional rain. If they don't have that additional rain, then we'll just really cross our fingers that there's good snowpack everywhere. I hope that helped, anonymous Zoom user person. Any other questions? Great questions today, guys. All right, well, there's no bad questions, and I know sometimes it takes a minute for them to come out, so I'm going to kind of leave a few seconds here and just say again, you know, this has been absolutely terrific as far as the snow season has gone. Very optimistic compared to where we were 6 weeks ago. And I think that's how we just need to approach going into the future too. You know, we are at 70% of our April 1st average, which is great. And we do have a couple storms that are looking to come through and hopefully more lined up behind that. So cautious optimism moving forward that we'll get up or close to average and that we'll have plenty of water for the upcoming spring and summer and plenty of snow on the ground to help us with our wildfire danger and our ecosystem health as well. So with that, I don't see any more questions. I'm going to thank all of you very much for attending today. I'm going to end this and the recording will be uploaded just as soon as it's done processing on YouTube, and I'll include all the links when I do that. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.